Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I wanted to play around with more watercolor, surprise, surprise. And today I was experimenting with hot press watercolor paper. I've never used hot press before. For those that aren't familiar with it, it has a very smooth texture. You know, regular watercolor paper has a little bit of tooth to it, a little bit of grain, a little bit of rougher texture, whereas hot press, it's very, very smooth. Very smooth. It's really good for stamping on. It's different. And it's also usually fairly expensive. I think it's just the method to make it creates a more expensive paper. So I decided to make kind of smaller cards because I didn't want to waste a bunch of paper. So I'd cut down 2 smaller pieces and I taped them just to a masonite board to hold them flat. And I pulled out my Gansai Tambi watercolors and I sprayed the colors I wanted to use with just my distress sprayer, any like spray mist or whatever would work, just to kind of activate the color. And then I was picking up the color and just mixing it on a tile. I've had this tile for years. I used to use it for other things. It's just a big old glazed tile from Home Depot, and I think it's like 8 inches square, something like that. But it's an awesome watercolor palette. So I'm glad I found it in a drawer a few weeks ago. And I've been using it a lot since. It's perfect. And it's perfect for my desk because I've always said I have like no space. So anywho, I have 2 cups of water here as well, and I use one for dirty water, like to kind of clean my brushes, and then the other one I keep clean to, you know, pick up water with my brush and mix the colors. And I'm using this Grumbacher brush. It's kind of a different sort of brush. It has different types of hair in it, and it's you can see it kind of splatters when I use it, which is what I like when I'm doing something like this. I think if you're more careful with it, it won't splatter as much, but I find it just, 1, I'm not that careful, and 2, it just splatters no matter what I do. But I like that. It just adds these unintentional little splatters on my watercolor. So I started by just adding some color to the paper, and then like with the pink one, I added a pink and then a little bit of orange, and then I let it completely air dry. And I did the same with the other piece that I added some blue and some green and let it air dry. And then once it was dry, I went back in and I added some yellow to the pink piece and I added some purple to the blue piece. And again, let it sit and completely dry. For me, that's the hardest. I always want to hit things with my heat tool, but watercolor acts differently depending on the type of watercolor you use, the type of paper you use. And I've been saying it a lot. It's just a matter of experimenting and playing with it and seeing what works for you. And yeah, these turned out, I was happy with how they turned out, so I wanted to make them into cards. I was kind of channeling Debbie Hughes a little bit here. She made a couple cards using these same dies. And in the back of my mind, I'm just recalling, like, she did some sort of like a watercolor background. They were really soft and pretty. And I was kind of thinking that, but me, I can't do the soft and pretty near as well as she can. I like the bright, crazy, fun colors. So I took both those pieces and I used my mini Misty to stamp the sentiment because stamping over watercolor sometimes can be a little finicky, and I wanted to make sure, you know, that I got the sentiment perfect because I didn't want to mess these up. So I used the mini Misty and I took a sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp Friendship Blooms stamp set, and I was stamping it with the Simon Says Intense Black ink. And both times I ended up stamping it twice to just give it, you know, a perfect impression, fully black sentiment, exactly how I wanted it. And it just worked out with both pieces that the sentiment worked perfectly in both spots. So I didn't have to move it or anything, which is another reason why I'm really loving the Misty and the mini one. And the dies are from the Simon Says Stamp Churches dies. So I just die cut them from white cardstock. And got a little finicky here. This was probably, other than the watercolor, the most time consuming part. I trimmed down some Cool Tack clear foam into little tiny pieces and popped these up with the clear foam because I didn't want you to be able to see the adhesive. I did think about just stacking these die cuts, like cutting, you know, 3 or 4 of each, but I kind of wanted that dimension, and so that, you know, it was almost as if they're like floating there, you know, with the watercolor. It just gave it a little bit of a different look. So I took the time to cut down all that Cool Tack foam, and then as a final little bit of embellishment, I grabbed several different pretty pink posh sequins, the colors and the marshmallow ones I showed in a recent haul. And then I've got this little decorative jar that I keep right on my desk that is full of the pretty pink posh sparkling clear mix because I use these on everything, so I don't even bother putting them away. I keep them displayed right on my desk. So I kind of lined up the sequins how I wanted them on each card, and then I'm just using little dabs of Ranger's Multi-Medium Matte Adhesive and pressing those into place. So using more than normal, usually you use like 3 or whatever. I decided to put like about 6 on each card just because I could. So once those were done, I set them aside. The card bases are going to be 4-bar sized card bases. So I cut down some heavyweight white cardstock to 3.5 inches by 9 3/4 inches. And then I used my paper cutter to line these up at 4 7/8 and scored them with my Teflon bone folder. So that makes a 4-bar size note card, which is 4 7/8 inches by 3.5 inches. So got those done. I always press down the fold or the crease of the card really, really well with that bone folder. And then I popped both of these up with some foam tape to hold everything. And I was generous with the foam tape because they warped the teeniest little bit with that watercolor. Not very much, because taping it down helps kind of prevent that. But got those adhered to each card base. And then I die cut the church's dies again with the white cardstock and popped out all the centers, and then adhered those to the inside of each card with the same multi-medium matte adhesive, and then left the insides at that. It's got that little bit of embellishment, but since these are smaller note cards, I wanted to leave all the space for being able to write something and not take up all the space with a sentiment or anything like that. So that finished off the cards. So they're just fun and really pretty. I'm absolutely loving watercolor. The more and more I do it, and I just encourage everyone. I've been getting a lot of comments and questions and emails from people like, oh, I'd never be able to do it like you. Trust me, my first watercolor attempts, some of which are on YouTube, are horrible. So the more you play with it, the better you get at it. So if you're interested in any of the supplies used, they are linked below along with a link to my blog post. Just check out the description box if you're interested in that, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.